welcome to the sixth episode of 15 Questions with a Feminist. So let's get right into it. Question number one. What is your name and what is your role in the menstrual movement?
hmm Okay, hey everybody. My name is Zhami. I use she, her pronouns, and when I was, I think, a junior in high school, I learned about period organization and decided to start a chapter in Princeton, New Jersey. And so that's when I think my journey began. And afterwards, after growing it to a few schools, I left my high school and went to college and was also a member of the New York City chapter for a while. Yeah, and I did most of the work a few years ago, and then right now I'm just like supporting when I can. Yeah.
Question number two. When did you first get involved in the menstrual activism space?
So I think it was 2019. Yeah, 2019. I was junior in high school, and I think I first found out about activism of Instagram, and I saw Nadia Okamoto from Period just being like very active, and I started watching some TED Talks and just following like people talking about it on Instagram and making it like very cool and accessible. And so I decided to get involved. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Question number three. Personally, what was the biggest challenge that you've faced so far?
I think I was never really afraid of starting something new. Like that's wasn't really a challenge, but I think it could be for a lot of people. Um, yeah, I was kind of like I just felt like strong intuition that there is something here that should be done. And then I didn't know anything about like how people do activism, how people like fundraise and raise awareness and bring people together and like solve very difficult like social issues. But I would just like kind of put myself in a lot of uncomfortable situations or kind of just reaching out to people and yeah, learning more. And then uh the most helpful thing was finding people in my high school and like in the area that also were interested in kind of connecting and doing it together. And so that part wasn't super hard. It's just like you just kind of keep going. But then it became hard when I had to not just talk to people who agree with me that, oh, like we should or like maybe schools should provide free period products, or like public restrooms maybe should have more period products, and like there shouldn't be a tax on them, and just like a lot of these points. I found out that a lot of people didn't even want to listen to it, and like a lot of people don't care, and a lot of people have like some, I don't know, like cultural beliefs when it comes to menstruation. And in certain spaces, like they wouldn't even let us say word period because it was so stigmatized. And it's just kind of moving on to people who maybe we don't speak the same language. So yeah, and then at that point, I think it was pretty hard to talk to obviously like certain men, like when we were fundraising, and then people with, yeah, different like cultural beliefs. Yeah, so I think to really kind of expanding the audience, that was pretty hard.
And now, more broadly speaking, for question number four, what do you think is the most pressing problem that we're facing as a community in menstrual justice?
hmm I was thinking of legislation because we could make a lot of progress on like community level, but then if an organization stops working, then there's no like safety net, and that's where we hope like the bill to pass and stuff like that. And I don't think he did yet. Like, yeah, a few countries like in Europe, they are like doing that and they're like requiring period products, but we are still like very far because we really need that like systemic change. And I think you're completely right about like the summer and like Roe Wade being overturned. It's like now it's very clear that they literally do not understand how women's bodies work.
Yeah.
And like it's just crazy. I thought it was bad, but it's like, oh, it's actually really bad. Like they really don't like. don't get it, and like they don't want to get it. Like yeah,
And
and uh and it's literally like you have women everywhere. It's like you have some in your family and you still don't know like just the basic things of how our bodies function. Um and we probably don't understand some things about men either. Like I feel like there was more like education on each other, and yeah, and the legislation is just, oh my gosh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Question number 5. Describe the process of starting a period chapter.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think the first thing I did is just I wanted really to just connect on personal level with people who've done this before. So I went to a conference in New York City. It was like the period conference, and that's when I actually met another girl that's from my area, and Niati. And then we also, so we just like connected. They're like, oh my God, we can just do it together. I think after we went to the conference and we came back to New Jersey, so it was Niati and I who were deciding to do it together. And then I found a few people in my high school. I think it was like three other people, and so that we can start a club. And then Yeti started a club in her high school. But then, as a whole, we would be like a period chapter.
Mhm.
And then the next step was to collaborate with any local organizations. And that's, I think, one of the best things we've done because period, like, as the organization is like national, so it's very easy to talk about things very like broadly, but then finding like a local organization and connecting with like local shelters, obviously because that's who we want to help, and like schools, like government officials, it really like grounded us and helped us figure out the next important steps to do to like really make progress in the area. And so we found one organization and they have already been supplying like a lot of shelters and certain I think schools with peer products. So we decided to just start fundraising. So we would find there were like grocery stores. We would ask them if we could like set up a table outside. And so we did yeah, different posters, and then we would just slowly start kind of fundraising money from the community. And then with that local organization, we would give them the money, and then, or usually we would actually buy the products and then give them the products, and then they distribute them. So we didn't even have to distribute at that point. Yeah, we were just like connecting with local places where we can fundraise and where uh, whoever needs them, like needs the products. Yeah, and then after that, I think we did a rally and we were able to kind of expand a little bit outside of our city. Yeah, but it's just important to find like people who are already doing it or have been doing for a long time in your area, and then find ways to collaborate. So yeah, that's what we did.
For the next question, would you say it was easy to maintain an open line of communication between individual chapters at Period and Period National? Or would you say that you were mainly working just with local groups? Yeah.
I think it was pretty easy, to be honest. Maybe at the time, like period was still growing, and um, yeah, but whenever I would like send them an email, even if I just wanted to talk, like if I would have like, yeah, just like confused about how to explain the issue, yeah, they would be like super willing to reply and just like explain everything and hop on a call with you. And yeah, I think it was pretty good. And I think they also had a form we would fill out to get some products or some type of support. Oh yeah, I think it was like the portal where they had a lot of the toolkits. Um, but yeah, it seemed at the time they're very responsive. Um, yeah, I wish there were more like I wish they shared a little bit more opportunities because it seemed like the national team they like had their own thing and sometimes would take up too much space. So but yeah, but otherwise like for like the beginning they were like very good in supporting. Mhm.
And now, moving to a bit more of a broad question, what role does creativity play in working towards solutions for period poverty?
Yeah, I guess like in our case, because we had to deal with a lot of people who for whom it was like kind of hard to understand like what it means to lack period products and like how bad stigma can like affect people and so we had to have a lot of hard conversations and sometimes it was difficult to even start the conversation, so we had to find ways to kind of bring people together and make it a safe space for people to start talking. And I remember we did a bunch of like movie screenings, which definitely started some conversations at our school. And then with more like artistic approach, I know we had one of our like initial team members, I think it was Wolf, and he's like an artist basically. And so when we would host any type of event, he would make I think he would make the posters and I remember he would make a video game and then he presented it and then we would make like different crafts that would symbolize like periods. So and then yeah, just having people of different like genders on the team was very helpful. And different like cultural backgrounds. But there's definitely different ways to start a conversation. Like you can have a panel or you can do like a movie screening or yeah, you can do like a fundraiser and just connect with people that way. Yeah, I think one other thing is like we didn't understand that much about how like legislation works, but we were all like, "Oh my God, Cory Booker is cool. Let's like set up a meeting with his office." And so we just went to his office and told him that, "Oh, we're like this group of students and we really want period products in high schools." And they actually listened to us. Like I think one of his like aides, but they like yeah, let us come and just like we talked to them and it was so good. And yeah, so just like being bold is very important. And yeah, you never know like who would be into the issue. So yeah.
Moving on to a bit of a related question. In your time spent in the menstrual space, what has been the most efficient or successful way to create a change?
So actually I just visited our high school like a few weeks ago. And I remember like when I went to the restroom, like I haven't been back in school in like 2 years, more than 2 years. Yeah, almost like 3 years. And I still saw the same like box that we all made in Pi Lab. And yeah, that we just like it was just like a little box, but they still have it in the restroom and they still like stock it every day or like whenever it runs out. And that just like made me so happy beyond even any other like fundraising we did or anything, because this is like systemic change. Like now it's gonna be there forever, hopefully. And I feel like that was the best thing we've done, or I feel like I've done, that just is amazing because um yeah, it's pretty small to like make sure that one restroom always has peer products, but to know that this is like now kind of part of the school and we never know like what kind of students we might have in the future and who might need like I mean obviously like so many will need pure products, but yeah, just kind of starting very very small is very important. Like literally like what's the restroom you use the most? Like just think about that and then see if there's a way to make sure that they put pure products there. Yeah, and just talking with administration, I know some of them would just look at me like crazy, like, what are you talking about? Like, what are your products?
Mhm.
But now they all understand like how useful this is, that none of the students ever have to like miss class or be stressed about like having to get back to their dorms or something to pick up a pad. Yeah, just like starting very, very small, just thinking about your like day-to-day life and what would you do like for yourself or close ones. Yeah, I feel like that's the best way to make a change.
For question number 9, how can people currently motivate more people who do not menstruate to speak up in the conversation surrounding menstrual equity?
The first thing that comes to my mind is storytelling or any type of like documentaries or videos that people have already made. And I know like one of them won an Oscar, I think it was 3 years ago, also when we were still in high school. It was period end of sentence, and it's literally like 20-minute documentary. But really when you like connect with the characters and know what they're going through, you finally like understand what it is that people are going through, because we can't like just make people feel guilty for not thinking about it, because I don't know, it's just it's very hard to um like convince people with words sometimes. Like we just really need to make them feel it and understand. And I think through like visual stories could be really, really helpful. So yeah, I would just encourage like more access to that type of media, and yeah, like movies and documentaries. And I think yeah, it was very good when we like screened period end of sentence. I remember, I feel like it made people understand it so much better than any conversations we've had, like just yeah, by talking and trying to explain. And that one movie screening like literally helped so much. What would you say? Actually, I'm curious.
I think for me, I would kind of relate to the personal stories thing because I think, in my experience, hearing people's personal stories has always been much more impactful than seeing any statistics or anything, especially because when I first joined Period, I literally knew nothing about periods because I got my period really late. So I didn't know how tampons worked, I didn't know any of it. And I think it was mainly personal stories that got me to understand periods and period poverty even before I myself had a period. And I think that's why I like asking this question, is because for me, at the time I joined, I was also not someone who menstruated. So it's like I kind of think about how I first got interested as a non yet menstruator, I guess. And yeah, I like relating that to other people who will never menstruate. So,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I feel like another thing is maybe like asking a question, for example, oh, what would you think like what would you do if you were in a period but didn't have like a pad? Like literally just like make them think for a second, like
yeah.
what are like other options, or do you feel like would you like put like toilet paper? Like do you think that would be like comfortable and safe? And I don't know, because like that's what I did when we didn't have like money. Yeah, I would just use like toilet paper, and if I'm like super privileged, I would have like cotton pad.
Mhm.
Or yeah, and then there are like many other like things people use, just like pieces of cloth or like sometimes paper, or just yeah, kind of like trying to make people imagine like what it would be like. Yeah, because if they don't ever have to think about it, like it's very hard to make them kind of understand what it's like to have that type of experience.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then for question number 10, how would you say the US compares to other countries that you've experienced with regards to stigma surrounding periods?
So yeah, because I grew up in Kazakhstan, like it's not a very like religious country, so we didn't really have any kind of stories tied to menstruation. It's just like a natural thing. But it was definitely like weaponized against women in a lot of situations. And especially if like um a woman and like getting in position of power, like her menstruating would be like a thing to not have her like in power, or like whenever women would show any signs of like emotions, like immediately, like I don't know, it was so common. Even in my own family, it was just like so annoying that it would immediately be like, oh, you're in your period, like chill, like I don't know. um but in US it's like at least they can talk about it. At least we have like the language for it. Where in my country, there's yeah no way to talk about it. Yeah, even like the fact that we have like peer organization or any type of organizations that focus only on like peer products, that's like so huge. Because
Mhm.
in my country, we just like maybe like just a charity like for women as a whole, but never like anyone focusing on it as like its own issue at all. Like, yeah, maybe it's like a part of like women's problems, but like, yeah, I think there's definitely more dignity that I feel like being in US and kind of figuring out how to solve this problem with yeah, access to pure products and stigma and all of that. Um, so yeah, so I believe that there will be a lot more progress just because we can even like talk about it and like do something about it. Whereas like in my home country, it's yeah, you're kind of on your own.
Yeah. And I definitely see where you're coming from with the contrast because I grew up here, but I visited a lot of family members in Eastern Europe as I was growing up. And there's definitely a very clear difference between how periods are treated here, where they're still stigmatized, but definitely not to the extent of where most of my family is from, because there it's very much a taboo topic. You're not allowed to bring it up, and if you do, it's not going to reflect well on you. So it's yeah, the stigma is very prevalent
Yeah,
there. All right.
yeah. I think stigma is like the biggest issue.
Number 11. How can young people get involved?
Yeah, so I think as I said earlier, it was very helpful for me to kind of just like take a look at my own surroundings and the places that I go to, like my school or the local library or just like any spaces that like I am in and see if they have like any type of support or like access to pure products. And yeah, just like kind of being curious and asking if this is something that could be possible to kind of change um, like the space that you're already in. And yeah, the other most important thing that helped me is talking to like-minded people. If there's like any of your friends or maybe someone from any of your teachers or administration who could understand like what you want to do. And yeah, I think in our case it was also like definitely a few teachers that were super, super supportive because they see like the problem probably even more clear than you might because they've been like working there for a while. And yeah, and so just finding that support is very important. And you can just start with like a simple conversation, like being curious, like, oh, if you've noticed anything, like any problems that happened, or if we could maybe start providing peer products, or maybe if we can have like an event, if we can invite a speaker, or yeah, like do a screening. Yeah, it could be like really anything. Yeah, and then finding organizations that are like youth led, like period, and there are like a bunch of others probably. Um, yeah, and I think it's just easier to talk to other young people for sure. And usually like period and some other organizations might have already like prepared kind of like first steps to getting involved. Yeah, definitely checking out their web pages and YouTube. Yeah, could be really helpful. And just like joining a local chapter or like a local organization. Yeah, even in our case, like in Princeton, I thought there was nothing, but there's like a whole organization that have been supplying like shelters for like a few years. And I think they're part of like soup kitchen. And um yeah, libraries are like a good resource usually as well. So yeah, just kind of like starting the conversation with your friends could be very powerful, and just looking at the spaces that you already have access to that you might be able to change. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think finding a lot of resources online, especially right now, is
Mhm.
a pretty viable tool for joining any organizations that you might be interested in.
Mhm.
All right, question number 12. What is something you wish you knew about menstruation growing up?
I think the most important fact that I learned is that we really don't know much about it. Like there really hasn't been enough like medical research that goes into menstruation because it's kind of like a thing that just happened like by evolution and I wish I really understood what it was for. Like it's for example like your body cleaning out and yeah and just like what does it really mean? Like why is this happening? Like I wish there was a little bit more like medical explanation. Yeah, a lot of people still don't know enough about it. Like there's literally not enough research, so it's not like your problem that you don't know about like how menstruation really works and why some people feel more pain than others and yeah, and I think one other important thing is so whenever I would go to conferences, I feel like that's the most interesting thing I learned, like about just the medical aspects. And I remember the first time I learned about endometriosis, it was like revolutionary for me that actually like if periods are super, super painful, like that shouldn't be the case. Like it means that it's actual like a disease. And even um kind of noticing that and for women to get diagnosed it's such like a huge thing um so yeah, and then also learning about I think birth control and how useful that could be to maintain your periods. um yeah, I think like the medical like facts were so useful, and I literally had to like buy books to read about it because during my whole school education like up until like college I only had one lecture when I was like in fourth grade on what periods are, and then that's it. And then I was told like, oh, you might learn this in your biology classes, but in high school I didn't actually take any biology classes, so I didn't learn anything. And then I just like had to just learn by watching YouTube and buying books, and yeah, that was like not good. I just wish there was more like education about it. And yeah, that's what I wish I knew. Mhm.
Question number 13. What does stigma mean to you?
Yeah, I think it was like one of the most painful parts of like learning about my body and like menstruation, just how like a lot of people wouldn't be comfortable talking about it when it's literally something that like half of the population goes through. It just makes me feel less confident and less respected, or kind of it could even like lower your self-worth because something that's so fundamental to you is being treated like so badly and with like sometimes like almost disgust. It's like, what is going on? Like, yeah, I don't know. It was just like so weird to me because like yeah, when I talk to other women, like it's completely normal topic, and then some people would just be like, oh no, 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 like I don't talk about this. It's just a woman thing or something. It's just like what the hell? Like I don't know. Um, it just like doesn't make me feel good at all. And then it definitely prevents from like asking certain questions or starting conversation. It's just really painful, like and sad when like something that's like part of you and people just I don't know. Um, yeah, treat it like something you can't talk about. It's just super strange. Like it's just so strange. So
Definitely.
yeah.
All right, and now for our second to last question, trying to end this on a bit of a lighter note. Do you have any particularly entertaining life stories pertaining to periods?
I don't have any like crazy period stories. I don't know. It's just been. very boring. But um just like yeah, whatever. But yeah, the first time I think I got my period was very interesting to me just because of like the sensation. It was so new and so weird because I remember like I was telling my mom like I have like a stomach ache and she was like, how does it feel? And I was telling her it feels like there's a string attached uh to to me and it's like a brick is hanging on it. Yeah, I just remember that moment trying to explain to my mom like what does it feel like, and somehow she knew, like she understood that I was getting my period. And then when we got home and we saw that it was like I got my period, she was like, oh, I knew right away when you told me. And it's like my explanation was like the weirdest one, and still like yeah, it was just like I still remember that first like time I felt it. Yeah, it's almost like my soul knew that I had a period. So yeah.
Yeah. And that is a strange explanation, but it weirdly makes sense though. Like it
Mhm.
And for our final question, do you have any last words of wisdom for anyone who may be listening?
Okay, so I think one thing I would say, yeah, it's probably a little bit more broad, but also the reason why I'm kind of taking a break from school as well and realizing that like your grades in the world like don't matter as much. I mean, obviously, like it's very obvious, but a lot of like things that we stress about so much, like grades and like money and yeah, these like material things and achievements, I feel like don't matter as much as like you being a kind person and being a good community member, because really that's what people really care about. Like when they interact with a new person, like they just want someone who understands them, who is kind and compassionate, and is just a good community member. So yeah, I think it's good to keep that in mind when you're learning about like other people and yeah, you're thinking about what's important. Um yeah, just like to take a second to think about people around you a little bit more than of like these artificial things. Like so I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I love that answer. I think it's also very relevant in my own life right now, so thank you for sharing. And as we're wrapping this interview up, are there any final things you'd like to share, or do you think we've talked about everything you wanted to discuss?
Okay, actually one thing I would want to say is I just realized how much I kind of like as soon as I left high school, and we had a club in my college for a while, but it's like it doesn't exist anymore. And in like the town where my college is, there's like literally no like similar initiatives like this, but I just realized how much I kind of became like so stressed on college that I forgot about like the things that I cared about when I was like in high school. And yeah, so I feel like one thing I would like personally take out from like this interview is just like to look into those like local organizations that maybe I have in my town. Maybe not necessarily around periods, but just like any type of charities or like soup kitchens type initiatives, and just see like what they're up to and if they have anything related to like period products. Yeah, because I feel like I've been a little bit out of touch with it. Um, but yeah, so thank you for inspiring me again.
Yeah, of course. I'm
And
glad.
yeah, I'm just like so glad to see that this keeps going. And yeah, I didn't know there was like, yeah, I didn't even know it was like a thing in Princeton because I came from another country and I see like, oh my God, rich town, like they're good. And it's like, oh my God, like it's a problem everywhere. And yeah, really like if you just look into certain things, like you'll see so much happening underneath. Um, so yeah, thank you for what you do, and thank you
Yeah,
for
and
this
thank you
interview.
for starting this chapter. Because yeah, we wouldn't exist without you. So
Thank you.